She was hours away from giving birth. Nurses said the couple had argued quietly at first. But something shifted. His voice rose. Hers didn't. The hospital staff thought they were just anxious. Emotions tend to run high during labor. No one imagined it would end with the sound of a gunshot echoing down a hospital hallway. The maternity ward locked down in seconds. Chaos rippled through the corridors. Code blue, security alert, a newborn crying in the distance. When the first officer arrived, the sight inside room 304 brought everything to a standstill. A woman lay motionless in her hospital bed. Fresh blood soaked the thin cotton sheet meant to welcome a new life into the world. A man stood nearby, hand trembling, weapon still warm. His eyes were dry, focused, silent. In the hallway just outside, his sister sat on the cold floor, rocking slightly. Her hands were clenched. She had made the phone call that brought him here. She told him something she thought he deserved to know. And now, in less than 3 minutes, one life had ended. Another had just begun. And a family was about to be torn apart, for good. This case begins in a delivery room, where joy should have been the only outcome. What happened inside room 304 of Riverside General turned that expectation on its head. And this is the story of a woman who gave birth to her daughter, and minutes later was shot by the very man she had built a life with. On June 12, 2023, Jenna Clark, a 29-year-old labor and delivery nurse, had just delivered her second child. Moments later, she was declared dead, the result of a single gunshot wound to the chest. The man who pulled the trigger was her husband, Michael Clark, a 33-year-old electrician and father of 2. The hospital descended into chaos. Staff were left stunned. Family members, some just steps away, were unable to process what had just taken place. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. What surfaced next raised far more questions than it answered. Police learned that shortly before the shooting, Michael received a call from his sister, Danielle. What she told him sparked a chain of events that would turn a maternity ward into a crime scene. Their marriage, already under stress, had been hiding something. Danielle's revelation was the final strike. But what exactly did she say? And why did Michael believe that violence was the answer? This is not just a case about murder. It's about loyalty, betrayal, and the moment a secret became more powerful than a promise. Stick with us, because this story will make you question what a family is truly capable of. They met in college in a finance lecture hall at Ohio State. Michael Reed, calm, steady, reliable. Jenna Clark, compassionate, driven, determined. Friends described Michael as measured and rational. Jenna was warm, empathetic, and already following her dream of working with children. After graduation, Michael accepted a corporate banking role in Cleveland. Jenna traveled to pediatric clinics, earning respect both for her clinical skill and her gentle bedside manner. They fell in love over late-night study sessions, weekend volunteer events, and shared stories of childhood. Their wedding, in late summer of 2015, embodied their personalities. Simple, heartfelt, meaningful. Family and friends still recall the way Jenna looked at Michael, full of pride, affection, and hope. Within 2 years, they bought a modest house in the Glenview suburb of Cleveland. Jenna painted the spare room soft yellow in preparation for their first child. Michael handled the finances. Together, they planned every detail, choosing the crib, selecting books, even labeling storage bins. Their first daughter, Lily, arrived in early 2018. Jenna's eyes brimmed with tears as Michael handed her their child for the first time. Videos from the hospital show the couple's joy, slow, unsteady laughter. A quiet kiss, a lifetime of promise ahead. In spring of 2022, the couple discovered they were expecting again. That announcement came during a backyard barbecue, where Jenna held an ultrasound photo and Michael slipped a small bracelet reading, "Baby Clark number 2, onto her wrist. Neighbors cheered. Laughter. Light breezed through the trees. Again, it felt like the future had come full circle. They shared updates on social media. Nursery paint swatches, baby shower details, names considered. Comments from family and friends followed. "We can't wait to meet your little one. Lily is going to be a big sister." The community celebrated them. Behind these happy milestones, small tensions had begun flickering. Michael's sister, Danielle, had moved back into town after a divorce in mid-2022. They invited her to stay in a spare bedroom. Danielle was quiet at first, withdrawn, a contrast to the couple's outward cheer. She took evening walks alone and rarely joined family dinners. Jenna, ever the caregiver, offered help, conversations, hospitality. But Danielle declined, saying she needed space. Michael and Jenna quietly discussed Danielle. Jenna confided that Danielle seemed off, distracted. Michael reassured her, she's just hurting over her divorce. On the surface, it was benign, a brother caring for his sister in difficult times. As summer passed, Danielle began attending prenatal appointments. Jenna was eager to share each milestone: heartbeat, lump of tissues forming arms, legs. Danielle would sit silently in the waiting room, scrolling on her phone. She didn't dress in the usual baby pinks or blues. Her eyes sometimes lingered on Jenna's bump, but her expression never warmed. Within the family, Danielle's return held subtle consequences. She was often present at dinners, but rarely spoke. She glanced over Jenna's parenting guides, nursery choices, maternity photos. Jenna and Michael assumed she was just interested. But something changed in January of 2023, when Jenna discovered her sister-in-law had taken a fainting turn at a prenatal visit. Michael insisted she had fainted from hunger or stress. Danielle brushed it off by saying she hadn't been eating well, but at home, she was sleeping late, skipping meals. During a January weekend visit, Jenna noticed Danielle scrolling through the nursery's framed ultrasound images. When she asked, Danielle said she was admiring the baby, that she was happy for them. Jenna believed her. Looking back, Jenna's trust in Danielle's behavior may have begun to blind her. She didn't see that Danielle's tone had turned cooler, her smiles less easy, her eyes more distant. By March, Michael began working longer hours. Jenna noticed his absences, but he insisted it was for extra income, extra savings. She believed him. She was busy preparing the home, attending birthing classes, finalizing school registration for Lily. The day before the final week of pregnancy, Jenna and Michael hosted a small gathering of close friends. The mood was joyful. They toasted to the upcoming arrival. Friends brought diapers, tiny outfits. Laughter filled the living room. Michael and Jenna took a selfie with Lily on their laps, all wearing matching big sister shirts. Nearly everyone remarked how perfect the evening felt, and how complete the family seemed. Yet Danielle lingered near the back of the photo, her smile stiff, her eyes unfocused. Some guests sensed unease, but attributed it to a hard day or personal fatigue. Most chalked it up to typical pregnancy hormones, or a sister still healing. In the days heading into June 2023, the Clark household felt stable. Neighbors reported seeing the family walking Lily to preschool. Jenna posted a bedtime video of bedtime lullaby. Michael posted a photo of himself assembling the crib in soft morning light. Everything looked calm. And then, in a flash, everything changed. A utility call interrupted Michael's Saturday morning. He left the house briefly to handle an unexpected issue with the heating system. Jenna, carrying Lily, began preparing pancakes. Danielle quietly left the home, saying she was going for a walk. Lily's laughter echoed through the kitchen. Jenna kissed her daughter and went to see where Danielle headed. The door closed gently behind her. But none of them suspected that change was already in motion. What looked like a routine Saturday was masking a fracture. One that no one could have seen coming. Their quiet weekend, the last before labor began, was the final image of their pre-crime life. After this, the story changes course and heads straight toward tragedy. On the morning of June 12, 2023, Riverside General Hospital was brimming with the usual blend of joy and tension that accompanies new life. Laboring mothers, concerned spouses, and exhausted staff filled the halls. The maternity ward, tucked on the third floor, had been relatively calm, until room 3B changed that. Inside was Jenna Clark, a 33-year-old pediatric nurse known for her steady hands and calm nature. She had just completed a grueling 11-hour labor. Her baby, a boy, was healthy, crying loudly. The nurses were busy cleaning him up. Her sister-in-law Lisa had been by her side the whole time. But the man pacing outside that door, barely speaking, barely blinking, that was Michael Clark, Jenna's husband. Michael had arrived about an hour earlier, after getting a call from Lisa telling him Jenna was fully dilated. Something was off from the moment he walked in. The nurses later said he looked blank. Not worried, not overjoyed, just vacant. The nurse on call, Helen Vasquez, recalled it vividly. He didn't ask about the baby. He didn't even smile. He just stood there. Lisa tried to whisper something to him, and he pulled away. Lisa had been acting strange too. Tense, alert, protective even. She was seen standing between Jenna and Michael more than once. Something had shifted, but no one yet knew why. Jenna had just been stitched and was holding her newborn. Michael came in. Lisa stood by the window, arms crossed. What followed next was described by staff as low volume, but sharp. A conversation no one could quite make out except for 3 phrases. "You lied to me. How long? Is he even mine?" Michael's voice got louder. A nurse approached the room, but Lisa intercepted her at the door. Inside, the argument escalated. The baby began to cry again. Jenna's tone, as described later, was pleading, not hysterical, not angry, just worn down. He had gone to his coat, stored in the corner family lounge. What he retrieved was later identified as a concealed Glock 43. Licensed, registered, legally his. At 6:19 a.m., a single shot was fired. Jenna was struck in the chest at close range. She collapsed backward against the hospital bed, the baby still in her arms. The attending nurse rushed in, screaming. Lisa grabbed the infant and shielded him with her own body. Michael stood still for a full 5 seconds before placing the gun on the bed and sitting in the hospital chair as if nothing had happened. He didn't run. He didn't say a word. By the time security arrived, Lisa was covered in blood, cradling the crying newborn, trying to stanch Jenna's wound with her bare hands. So what happened? Why would a man with no prior criminal record, who just welcomed his first child, shoot his wife in front of witnesses? Investigators would soon learn that the answer began long before that delivery room, with a secret Lisa had been holding for 6 months. Lisa Clark, 35, was Michael's only sibling. They'd grown up in Ohio, raised by a single mother after their father left when they were kids. Lisa had always been protective, a second mother more than a sister. When Michael met Jenna 5 years earlier, Lisa had welcomed her into the family, at first. But the closeness between the two women had started to crack over the years. Jenna, focused on her nursing career, began pulling away from family events. Lisa, who had struggled with fertility and had been through a divorce, was sensitive to being left out, especially during Jenna's pregnancy. In January of 2023, Lisa intercepted a voicemail intended for Jenna. A man's voice, affectionate, specific, intimate. The name wasn't Michael's. Lisa said nothing at the time. She told investigators she wasn't sure what to do. But after more digging, reading messages on Jenna's tablet when she visited, overhearing calls, she confronted Jenna directly. The result? A screaming match. Threats of never speaking again. Jenna begged her not to say anything to Michael. Lisa complied, temporarily. The truth Lisa eventually told Michael remains somewhat disputed. She told police that she couldn't take the guilt anymore. She claimed she broke the news out of concern, for her brother, for the baby, for the marriage. But others believe it was revenge, bitterness, a power play. What we do know is this. On the evening of June 11, 2023, the night before Jenna went into labor, Lisa finally told Michael about the voicemail, the messages, and the man. She told him she believed the baby might not be his. Did Michael believe her instantly? Or did he come to the hospital hoping to confront Jenna? Maybe demand the truth, maybe just make a scene? Had the gun always been in his coat? Or did he place it there deliberately that morning? There's no video of the actual shooting, just audio. In that audio, investigators heard Jenna say, "Please don't do this in front of him." Right before the shot, the baby was never harmed. But Michael's calm surrender raised eyebrows. One officer described it as the quietest crime scene he'd ever witnessed. But we will refrain from any descriptors outside the facts. Michael's defense attorney would later argue diminished capacity, that the combination of shock, betrayal, and stress pushed him into a fugue-like state, that he acted without clear intent, triggered by the perceived betrayal and raw emotion of the moment. Prosecutors disagreed. They painted a different picture. A man who couldn't accept being lied to, who cared more about image than integrity. A man who valued control and reacted with violence when that control was threatened. One theory even suggested that Lisa set the whole thing up, not to cause a murder, but to hurt Jenna, to turn her brother against her permanently. Lisa denied this. "I told him the truth," she told the jury. "I never expected him to lose it. I thought he deserved to know." Was she lying? Or did she truly underestimate her brother's reaction? We may never fully know. Jenna was pronounced dead at 7:06 a.m. The baby was placed into protective custody and remained in NICU observation for 72 hours before being released to Jenna's parents. Michael was arrested on the spot. His mugshot, clean-shaven, blank-eyed, made national headlines by noon. Lisa, she didn't leave the hospital. She stayed, holding the baby, sitting outside the NICU doors until security asked her to leave. Her role would come under intense scrutiny in the weeks to follow. It's hard to reconcile the image of a growing family, baby showers, nursery photos, smiling social media posts, with what happened in that hospital room. Harder still to understand what it takes for someone to commit such a final act in the first hour of fatherhood. But the story of Jenna, Michael, and Lisa Clark didn't end with a bullet. It continued, in courtrooms, in custody battles, in silence between relatives who used to share holidays. And it raises questions no verdict can settle. Within moments of the shooting, the hospital went into lockdown. Officers sealed off the maternity wing. Forensics experts began gathering every piece of evidence. Bullet casings, fingerprints, surveillance footage, voice recordings. What emerged in the days that followed became critical to the prosecution's case. Hospital surveillance captured Michael's movements from 5:50 a.m. onward. In one still image, he is seen standing just outside the room. His posture is rigid, hands gripping his bag strap. A second still shows him standing in the hall facing away from the camera. The timestamp reads 6:04 a.m. A third image captures him returning less than 2 minutes later, once the baby was in Jenna's arms. These stills were crucial. They contradicted Michael's later claim that he had gone to the bathroom. Instead, he was seen pacing, hands trembling. These images would form the backbone of the state's argument for premeditation. After being arrested in the delivery room, Michael was driven to the city precinct. You can hear his voice on the recording. "I thought she said it wasn't mine. I froze. I never imagined it would go like that." He admitted to confronting her, but insisted he didn't intend to kill. Instead, he said he meant to get answers. The prosecution viewed it differently. They argued he brought the gun with intent. Lisa was interviewed separately the next day. In the clip, she is seated across from a detective. She is calm, almost detached. "I told him she was seeing someone else. Just words. I never expected what'd happen. I wish I didn't say anything." She confirmed her earlier voicemail, stating that Jenna responded in tears. Lisa said she felt trapped, that revealing the secret was the only way to protect her brother, although that claim would later be questioned. The state's lead medical examiner conducted the autopsy. The bullet entered just below the sternum, traveled through the heart, and lodged near the spine. The trajectory indicated Michael shot from close range, less than 6 inches away. Toxicology reports on Jenna showed no alcohol or drugs. She was alert and fully conscious when approached, according to the nurse. Michael Clark was charged with first-degree murder and took a seat in the county jail without bail. The weapon, his legally owned Glock 43, was held as evidence. Prosecutors portrayed Michael as a man who believed the paternity rumor and chose violence rather than conversation. Within hours, the local news dubbed it a hospital tragedy. Headlines read, "Hospital Horror, Family Destruction." The Lakewood Tribune ran an editorial calling for increased security in maternity wards, Neighbors and friends began offering conflicting character sketches. Former classmates said Michael was reserved but loving. Coworkers remembered Jenna's warm bedside manner and commitment to her patients. But others, closer to the couple, hinted at tension. A friend from work described a text exchange days before the event. "Lisa's weird about this whole thing. Michael's not himself." That text would resurface during testimony. Morning shift nurses held a vigil for Jenna in the hospital's chapel. A candlelit photo of Jenna and her newborn baby was placed between daisies. Staff circulated a sign-up sheet for the funeral. In public forums, commenters debated responsibility. Some blamed Lisa for sharing the rumor. Others sided with Michael's rights to know. A few said his reaction was unforgivable. 3 months after the incident, a private investigator contacted the defense. He raised several points. 1. That Michael panicked, believing his life and reputation were on the line. 2. He argued Michael was suffering from acute stress and possible PTSD due to a traumatic accident at work 8 years earlier. 3. He questioned Lisa's motives, suggesting she intentionally destabilized the relationship. But these claims had limited impact without medical records or formal diagnosis. The court would soon assess whether they were credible. Pretrial hearings brought the defense's case into focus. The judge ruled that Lisa's testimony was admissible, but that any private text exchanges would not be allowed without authentication. The prosecution introduced evidence methodically. Security footage showing Michael's pacing. Gun purchase and ownership records. The voicemail inbox on Lisa's phone. Police body cam with his "I thought she said" statement. Forensic pathologist detailing the ballistic evidence. The defense countered. Michael had no criminal past. He cared deeply for Jenna and Lily. He claimed no prior indication of violence. Panic and betrayal overwhelmed him. Criminal psychologist Dr. Renee Carter reviewed the case. When someone believes their entire identity, fatherhood, marriage, has been questioned, it can trigger fight or flight. In rare cases, people react impulsively in ways they can't control. She noted that sudden revelations, especially from a loved one, can cause disorientation and emotional collapse. Cross-examination of Lisa. In court, the defense attorney confronted Lisa. "Did you consider that telling him in a hospital could provoke a crisis?" Lisa broke down. "I couldn't sleep anymore. I thought he deserved to know. I never thought." Her tears became part of the trial record. Investigation into Jenna's behavior. During therapy sessions, Jenna had confided in a counselor 2 days before labor. She had expressed exhaustion and feelings of distance from Michael. But she denied infidelity, describing her relationship as challenged, not broken. Counselor notes recovered by the defense said she expressed fear of hurting Michael with the truth, not of betraying him. 2 competing narratives emerged. The prosecution saw betrayal, anger, a cold reading of vesting betrayal in the eyes of a husband and shooter. The defense spoke of an impulse control breakdown, catalyzed by emotional shock and stress. A tragedy spoken but unintentional. Media spotlight intensifies. National outlets soon picked up the story. A video segment ran on CNN. Boy killed his mother while she held his newborn. What does it say about our institutions, our access to mental health care? Op-eds followed, questioning how society supports new parents and monitors emotional well-being in maternity wards. During a packed pretrial hearing in October 2023, friends and family filled the courtroom. Lily was present with her grandparents, clutching a stuffed bunny. Reporters whispered. Cameras flashed. Michael's defense lawyer addressed the judge. "He's broken. He's lost everything. He did not intend to kill. We ask for a plea to second degree." Prosecutors responded. "He brought a gun to the hospital. He confronted her directly. Case closed." The judge denied the plea negotiation, concluding the evidence suggested full awareness. The trial was set for January 2024. The investigation laid bare the collision of truth and trust. It showed how belief, whether accurate or mistaken, can shatter life in seconds. It forced a community to ask hard questions. When does knowledge become too dangerous? When does love turn to violence? The following months in court would reveal more new documents, expert testimony, and the careful weighing of motives versus actions. But for now, we remain in the space where law and emotion first intersected. The trial began in October 2023 at the Cuyahoga County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed on opening day. Family, friends, reporters, and even hospital staff sat shoulder to shoulder, waiting to hear the details of what had become one of Cleveland's most disturbing domestic crime cases in years. Michael Clark entered the room wearing a plain gray suit and shackles at the ankles. He avoided eye contact with the gallery, his face blank, shoulders stiff. On the opposite bench sat Jenna's parents, holding hands. Jenna's father, Mark Thompson, had once said he thought of Michael as a son. Now, he watched as the man accused of murdering his daughter sat feet away from him. The air grew heavy as the prosecutor began the opening statement. A photo of Jenna holding her newborn was displayed on the courtroom monitor. Several people in the gallery quietly wiped away tears. The baby, now in the care of Jenna's sister, was only 4 months old. During testimony, Jenna's father took the stand. His voice cracked as he said, "She trusted him. This is beyond belief. She gave him everything." The defense team didn't interrupt. The judge allowed the jury to hear the full statement. The courtroom remained quiet. Lead prosecutor, Daniel Reeves, built the case on motive and intent. He argued that Michael Clark's behavior in the hours before the incident pointed to a calculated decision, not a momentary lapse in judgment. Security footage showed Michael pacing outside the maternity room for 11 straight minutes. Nurses reported overhearing parts of the confrontation. Heated words exchanged, Michael's voice rising. Reeves connected the timeline. Lisa's message to Michael was sent at 4:22 a.m. He arrived at the hospital at 5:08. The shooting occurred at 5:31. He didn't run, Reeves told the jury. He didn't collapse. He stood over her with the weapon still in hand. Witnesses included nurses, security staff, and a hospital technician who heard Michael yelling, "You lied to me," more than once. One nurse described hearing a thud before the shot, possibly Jenna trying to move away. The baby had just been taken to the nursery moments earlier. Medical examiner reports confirmed that Jenna died from a single gunshot wound to the chest. The bullet punctured her lung and heart. Death was declared on site. Reeves also read aloud excerpts from Michael's own statement, given during a post-arrest interview. In it, Michael claimed, "I didn't go there to hurt her. I just wanted to hear it from her." The jury listened closely as Reeves summarized. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision, driven by the belief that betrayal justifies ending a life. The defense, led by public defender Rachel Myers, approached the case from a psychological angle. She did not deny that Michael pulled the trigger, but she challenged the framing of his intent. This case is about grief, trauma, and a moment that broke a man who had been under mounting pressure, Myers told the court. She described Michael as a man who had built his life around his family, only to believe it had been a lie. The defense leaned heavily on Lisa's role. She told him that the baby might not be his, Myers said. It was a statement made in bitterness and jealousy, and it was untrue. A clinical psychologist testified on Michael's behalf. He explained that Michael had exhibited signs of acute stress disorder at the time of the shooting. Difficulty sleeping, racing thoughts, panic attacks. His symptoms had worsened during Jenna's labor. His judgment was clouded, the psychologist said. He didn't go there with the intent to kill. He went with confusion and emotional instability, fueled by misinformation. Myers proposed a plea to manslaughter due to diminished capacity. She argued that the emotional shock was severe enough to reduce culpability. It was a breakdown, not a plan, she said. You've seen the videos. He wasn't calm. He was pacing, sweating, repeating himself. This was not someone thinking clearly. However, the prosecution rejected any plea. The court proceeded with the charge of first-degree murder. The defense's attempt to secure a lesser verdict fell short. After 6 days of testimony and a day and a half of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Michael Clark was found guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps filled the courtroom. Some of Jenna's friends embraced, Others simply stared forward. Michael showed no visible reaction. He kept his head low, eyes fixed on the table. During sentencing, the judge acknowledged the tragedy on all sides. This court recognizes the emotional context of this case. But the law does not grant immunity to grief, he said. Michael was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He was led away without a word. Jenna's family released a statement shortly after. This verdict doesn't bring Jenna back, but it ensures that justice was served for her and for the child left behind. Riverside General temporarily closed its maternity ward in the weeks following the incident. Staff were offered trauma counseling, and hospital security procedures were reviewed and updated. In the broader community, the tragedy sparked conversations around mental health and fatherhood. Nonprofits began circulating resources on recognizing emotional distress in expecting parents. Local churches hosted panels on forgiveness, guilt, and grief. Jenna's colleagues at the pediatric clinic created a memorial scholarship in her name, supporting nursing students committed to maternal and neonatal care. Her story was featured in a local health podcast exploring the emotional complexities of childbirth for both mothers and fathers. Lisa moved out of Ohio shortly after the verdict. Though she later admitted her message was false, she never publicly apologized. Michael's parents took partial custody of the baby, who would later be legally adopted by Jenna's sister. The story stayed in public memory for months, with editorials questioning how quickly emotional misinformation can turn into irreversible tragedy. Mental health professionals used the case in lectures, emphasizing that crisis response support should be extended to partners during childbirth, not only the mothers. The community didn't forget what happened. The hospital reopened the ward, but the room where Jenna died was never used again. Months had passed since the sentencing. Public attention had drifted. But one piece of evidence, long buried in Jenna's digital records, would shake the foundation of the case that had seemed so certain. During routine case archiving, a junior paralegal reviewing Jenna's phone data uncovered a message dated June 11th, just hours before the tragedy. It read, "Yes, it's ours. I never lied to you." The recipient, Michael Clark. That message had never made it into trial evidence. Oversight, miscommunication, it reignited a wave of legal questions and personal ones too. Lisa Clark was called in again by post-trial review investigators. Her earlier statement had been clear and confident. She claimed Jenna was seeing another man. But now, her words trembled. "I wasn't in a good place. I said things to Michael I shouldn't have. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said during her taped deposition. In that moment, the motive at the heart of this tragedy wavered. Michael had claimed he believed the child wasn't his. That belief, prosecutors argued, drove him to kill. But if Jenna had just reassured him, documented by text, then why did he act so suddenly? Why didn't he pause? The answer may lie in timing and timing alone. The phone data revealed something sobering. Michael's device never opened the final message. It had arrived while he was already on hospital grounds, outside cellular coverage, stuck in the dead zone of the hospital's lower-level garage. By the time Michael reached Jenna's room, he hadn't seen the message that might have altered his state of mind. A digital whisper never heard. In emotionally charged situations, belief often outweighs fact. If Michael was convinced he'd been betrayed, especially with his sister's words echoing in his mind, rational evaluation becomes clouded. This is where intervention could have made a difference. Lisa's motivations, too, became part of a deeper inquiry. During follow-up psychiatric evaluations, it was revealed that she had been struggling with untreated bipolar disorder. Her confession, while not malicious, stemmed from a period of instability, jealousy, and misplaced protection over her brother. Though the court had already ruled, Lisa's new admission made the tragedy feel less like a closed case and more like a cascading failure of communication, mental health awareness, and timing. Could Michael have reacted differently if he'd seen Jenna's message? Would Lisa have said what she did if she were in treatment? What if hospital tech hadn't delayed that crucial text? These questions began circulating among both legal analysts and the general public. We're looking at a conviction built on emotion and misinformation. This wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a collision of truth delayed and trust destroyed. The ripple effect reached the Sentencing Review Board. While Michael's conviction stood, the revelations led to new recommendations for statewide mental health education in family legal proceedings and increased scrutiny on digital evidence management in active trials. House Bill 4081, inspired by the Clark case, proposed mandatory digital record analysis for all homicide cases involving domestic disputes. The bill passed unanimously. What started as a hospital tragedy soon became a case study in systemic missteps. Experts began asking, was this preventable? If one message had been read, just one, would a young mother still be alive? Too often, tragedy is treated as final. But sometimes, in the fine details left behind, we find what was missing. And while it doesn't bring back the lives we've lost, it reminds us that truth, when delayed, can still speak volumes. This case illustrates how a single lie, spoken at the wrong time, can become a fuse to something irreversible. A moment of broken trust, a decision made in seconds, and the fallout that no one can undo. The truth about what happened on June 12, 2023, at Riverside General Hospital cannot be measured only by court transcripts or forensic reports. It's measured in the silence left in a nursery that was never used. It's found in the face of a newborn who will grow up without a mother or a father. Lisa Clark, in her testimony months after the sentencing, admitted she fabricated the story about Jenna's fidelity during what she described as a psychological relapse. Diagnosed later with bipolar II disorder, her statement came too late. The bullet had already done its damage. The courtroom had already rendered judgment. The system had already moved on. Michael, during his last appearance before sentencing, did not speak. He only looked down at the table in front of him. His attorneys had prepped him for that moment. But he had no words. Not for the court. Not for Jenna's family. Not for himself. The ripple effect didn't stop at the hospital or the courtroom. Jenna's parents withdrew from public view. Their initial interviews with the press were brief and cautious. When asked if they blamed Lisa, they responded, "We blame the man who held the gun." Following public outrage, the Ohio Board of Family Wellness reviewed guidelines around visitation policies and mental health interventions within labor and delivery units. Several key reforms were proposed in the wake of the case. A mandatory mental health screening for all visitors granted extended access in maternity wards. A training for maternity staff to recognize signs of escalating emotional tension during labor. Access to on-site counselors for new parents, available before and after childbirth, especially for cases involving family conflict. Jenna's employer, a pediatric clinic in Lakewood, started a fund in her name. The Jenna Clark Fund now provides emergency emotional wellness grants for mothers navigating unsafe relationships, unplanned pregnancies, or mental health crises. By the following year, over 40 families had received help through that fund. Some used it to flee abusive partners. Others accessed therapy for postpartum depression. All of them said it gave them options, something Jenna no longer had. Incarcerated at Marion Correctional Institution, Michael has kept to himself. A former colleague who visited him described his state as mechanically alive. He reportedly asked about his son only once. The boy now lives with Jenna's older sister in Indiana. There's no custody battle. No legal maneuvering. Only silence. When Michael filed his first appeal, citing emotional distress and false testimony from a family member, the judge dismissed it. His attorney noted that while Lisa's statement may have been false, Michael still brought a firearm into a maternity ward and pulled the trigger. The law, the attorney said, couldn't ignore intent, even if the foundation of that intent was later proven false. Lisa disappeared from the public eye after testifying. The backlash was swift. Threats, doxing, mental health stigma. Her employer terminated her contract. Her driver's license was leaked online. At one point, she was placed on a psychiatric hold after a neighbor called emergency services. But through legal channels, Lisa filed a statement of accountability, not as an excuse but as acknowledgement. In part, it read, "I told my brother something I made up. I can't explain why I said it. I was lost in my own mind. I didn't think he'd believe me. I didn't think it would go that far. But he did. And now Jenna is gone. She now lives under a protective order in another state. Her name, once tied to community boards and fundraisers, has become linked to a tragedy no one can forget. The baby, named Nathan, was born at 4:12 a.m. on June 12th, just 34 minutes before the gunshot that ended his mother's life. He has no memory of that morning, but one day he will learn about it. His aunt, Rachel, said in a letter to the press, "We're raising him with love." That's what Jenna would have wanted. One day we'll tell him the truth, but for now, we tell him about his mother's laughter, her work with children, and how much she wanted him. A trust has been established for Nathan's future. Community donations, legal settlements, and proceeds from a foundation in Jenna's name contribute to it. He'll never know his parents in the way a child should, but he'll grow up knowing their stories. All of it. What happened at Riverside General opened deeper conversations in Cleveland's suburbs and beyond. Church groups held panels on emotional health. Pediatricians integrated mental health screenings into prenatal visits. One local school even invited Jenna's colleague to speak about grief and healing. While no policy can undo tragedy, the awareness that followed changed how some institutions approach family care during delivery. In one hospital, nurses began taking emotional conflict as seriously as physical symptoms during labor. For many, this story wasn't just about one man's decision. It was about how families handle pressure, how mental health still goes unspoken, and how far consequences can stretch when someone acts without all the facts. Michael Clark didn't ask for proof. He didn't read the messages. He didn't talk to Jenna first. He acted based on a whisper that echoed through his thoughts for days and exploded in the span of a few seconds. People close to the case still ask, did he really believe Jenna had betrayed him, or was he looking for a reason to collapse? One psychologist stated during the trial, "The brain under stress doesn't calculate, it reacts." But others argue, reactions don't excuse outcomes. Jenna's death became a grim example of what can happen when trust disintegrates under pressure, when the boundaries between truth and perception blur. What does justice look like in a case like this? A man in prison, a woman buried, a sister who can never undo her words, a child growing up in a world shaped by decisions made before his first breath. True crime is not just about violence. It's about the stories people tell, the ones they believe, and the ones they live with. The comments on news videos are still active. Some say Michael deserved worse. Others blame Lisa. A few express sadness for everyone involved. But no matter where you stand, one fact is beyond dispute. A life was taken, and it didn't have to be. Jenna's story reminds us that what we say carries weight. And sometimes the people listening are already on edge. Whether we speak out of hurt, confusion, or fear, our words can become weapons. Or lifelines. Was justice served in this case? Did Michael act out of pain? Or was it something else entirely? We'd like to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters.